With the latest on our hometown teams, this is Sports Wrap-Up with Bob Koshinski on WBBZ-TV, your hometown television station. Now, from our studios at the Eastern Hills Mall, here is Bob Koshinski.
Welcome to Sports Wrap-Up. Bob Koshinski with you again on a Tuesday night in our WBBZ-TV studios here at the Eastern Hills Mall. I'm excited about tonight's show because I get a chance to talk untethered to Jerry Sullivan, the sports columnist extraordinaire for the Buffalo News. We'll be talking to Jerry about both the Buffalo Sabres, what they need to do, where they are, and where they're going to end up. And we're going to talk about the Buffalo Bills. Of course, Russ Brandon, now the president, new coach Doug Marrone. Jerry will offer his opinion on all of those subjects and then some. Also, tonight, we want to remind you the Buffalo Sabres will be hosting the Winnipeg Jets. This is a must-win game for the Sabres. As you can see, the Jets and the Sabres pretty much in the same boat. And these are the teams the Sabres absolutely must beat if they're going to have a chance to make it to the playoffs. You know, real heartbreaker against the Penguins Sunday. You'd like to think they could get at least a point out of that game after going up 3-2 midway through the third period. Not to be. Teams in turmoil. I know Jerry's going to have much more to add about that coming up. Last Wednesday, our WBBZ-TV cameras were at UB. It was old school night. UB was a proud sponsor of that, or WBBZ was a proud sponsor of that promotion. Our WBBZ-TV cameras were there, along with John DeSciullo, had a promotion. We watched the crowd as the UB Bulls clobbered Toledo. Big game, big win. Paul Peck, the voice of the Bulls, on hand, of course, doing the game. And I had a chance to do a contest at halftime as the people watch clips of WBBZ-TV. Also had a chance to talk to John Dandies, who is the president of the Buffalo Bisons. John is a huge UB supporter, once president of the alumni. He was wearing one of our WBBZ UB headbands. And I asked John about the Maple Leafs affiliation with the Bisons.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're here with the president of the Buffalo Bisons, John Dandies, who is a huge supporter of UB athletics. You can tell by the luxurious seating that he has here. Not since Ron Berdovich has anybody had a seat this close to the court. So, John, it's great to see you here at the game.
Ron Berdovich has not paid for a ticket in 15 years.
No, but you've paid for this many times over.
I don't think either of you have paid for a ticket either.
Press credentials. Yeah. And tonight's another one of those nights.
Big game for the UB Bulls tonight.
WBBZ is proud to be a part of the big game tonight, John. And while you're here supporting UB athletics, another exciting Bison season is almost upon us.
April 4th, Bob. We're looking forward to it. Great affiliation with the Toronto Blue Jays. And we're hopeful that we'll be far more successful this year than we have been in the past four.
When you had your hometown team, the New York Mets?
Your friends, the New York Mets.
Your friends, the New York Mets. He grew up as a child worshiping the Mets, but you gave him a run.
They die hard. Yeah. Idols die hard. But we are looking forward with the Blue Jays. They've been great to work with so far. The team looks great. Their spring training started today, as a matter of fact. So we're hopeful that all the guys will be successful.
And John Dandies, April 4th, he'll be out there at the ballpark personally handing out programs, I'm sure, for opening day for the Bisons. By the way, for those who wondered, a name from the past, Ron Berdovich, who at one time was general manager of the Empire Sports Network. He was my predecessor. And he was a vice president of internal affairs, operations, team operations, whatever, at the Buffalo Sabres. Ron, a great guy. He's now with the Colonial League. Out of town, but still stays in touch with John and those of us up here in Buffalo. When we come back, we'll have on Jerry Sullivan. Jerry, a very opinionated columnist for the Buffalo News. Also, you can catch Jerry and Bucky Gleason every Friday at 10 o'clock on the Buffalo News website as they do their own talk show. But tonight, we're going to have Jerry all to ourselves. We're going to talk Sabres, Bills, all that coming up next right here on Sports Wrap-Up. Welcome back, Sports Wrap-Up. Bob Koshinski in studio, and we have with us Jerry Sullivan of the Buffalo News. Jerry, of course, the opinionated columnist for the News. That's what he gets paid for. Jerry, the Buffalo Sabres, big win over the Bruins. Sunday, they take the lead against the Penguins midway through the third period. Looked like this team was starting to turn it around. Then, as the saying goes, they snatched defeat from the jaws of victory. Ryan Miller very upset after the game. Where do you think this team is now, and where do you think they're going to end up?
I think they're in trouble, Bob. I like to call it the heroic run to 8th place. It looks like we're heading for that again for the third year in a row. I think it's troubling, and it should be disturbing to the ownership of this organization that they get into these holes. If I had to guess, I'd say they're not going to make the playoffs. They're playing all Eastern teams. They have fattened up against the West in those previous two seasons. And I just don't think I don't think the coaching is right. I don't think the talent is as good as people make it out to be. And they've dug themselves a hole. When you lose games like that, and don't get a point, by the way, in the jumble of teams
right.
For 8th place, you look back at these games. They did last year. They lost to bad teams. They threw points away, and that catches up to you. You look around the league, every night there are teams winning in overtime and shootouts, and it's all Eastern stuff, and teams are getting points when they lose. And they're not doing enough of that. And they've just got so many problems defensively. I don't know if they're going to be able to pull it all together. I think there's this notion that because they did it the last 2 years, they're going to go on one of these runs. I'm not so sure of that.
Well, you know, those who followed hockey forever know there's kind of a formula because you're not playing in a vacuum. Everybody else is playing the same night. So if you get a tie and you just get a point, somebody else gets 2 points. A couple of nights like that, you can mathematically almost be out of a playoff race. It happens very quickly, especially with an abbreviated season. You talked about Lindy Ruff, or at least the coaching. He's been here forever. He's very well respected. I heard an interview on GR Radio last week. Another former coach in the league who just, everybody sings Lindy's praises. Why do you think he's no longer the fit for the Sabres?
I just think he's been here too long. I mean, Hitchcock beat him in the finals in '99. He's been fired 3 times. Laviolette's beaten him and won the cup, been fired. It's that type of sport. Coaches get recycled because it's such a momentum game, even period to period. I think he's lost his team, and he tells me he reinvented himself after last year. Year 16, you're reinventing yourself. Well, what do you think they're thinking about in the locker room? And he's got a captain in Palmerville who is not much of a leader. Is he yelling at them now when they lose? What I'm saying is if you had to reinvent yourself in the way you deal with your own team, maybe you have lost them. You can't just change. And I think that the team doesn't respond to him probably because they're getting confused messages here. And I think when Miller blew up the other day, I think there are a lot of things on his mind. And the reason he left after 72 seconds was he was afraid of what he might say, that this team is screwed up emotionally, mentally, and that's why you have such ups and downs. And the fact that they've had streaks to get back in the playoffs or get in the playoffs doesn't change the fact they've been average overall since Terry Pegula got here.
One of the things that are a bit surprising to me, they've never been an offensive juggernaut with Lindy as a coach. That's not his style, except for the one year they had Briere and Drury here. But defensively, they're very porous. I think they're tied for most goals against in the league. You've got a goalie who at least nationally is looked upon as a top-notch goalie. And they spent a lot of money to bring in some defensemen. Why is that where you think Lindy's dropping the ball?
I think his methods have gone stale. I think his power play is very unimaginative. I don't think the players are responding to his so-called system, which is basically just play hard and go get the puck and dig out the puck, and defensemen come up into the play. I don't know if they're fully committed to that, and that small margin of effort that separates good teams from average in this league, they're not doing those things consistently enough. And I don't know what he's teaching them defensively, because some of these defensemen, starting with Myers, don't seem to get it. They seem to be playing tentatively. I think that's a lot of it. I watched Myers one game where he seemed like afraid to make a simple pass out of the zone with no one even near him. And to some extent, that has to get back to the coach. If players are playing without confidence, if they're tentative, then something's wrong with the coach. But ultimately, you need to tell this group of players and everyone in town, this isn't good enough. And unfortunately, or fortunately, whatever, firing the coach is the way it's done. That's what was done with L.A. They win the cup last year. It's what was done in Pittsburgh 3 or 4 years ago. They won the cup. Sometimes it gets great results.
All right, begs the question, why have Darcy Regier and Lindy Ruff, what is the love affair with these two, the GM and the coach, with 3 separate ownership groups?
I really don't know. I think they're very persuasive and very, Lindy's a very likable guy. And it was an unusual situation. You had Larry Quinn resurfacing, and different ownership helped that happen. They kind of all gave them some time to get to know them. And I don't think, certainly in the case of, none of the owners really, Pegula knows hockey, but I think he's too much of a fan. The other guys weren't as much of fans, but they didn't know hockey. So you haven't had an owner who really has a grasp of the situation and the problem.
Bob, when the day Pegula got to town, I ran a front-page story in the Buffalo News, a column saying I would fire
Darcy right now. You're probably not going to do that. Bring in an outside set of eyes, a hockey guy, to tell you what the problems are here and to look over Darcy's shoulder and change things. Don't trust him moving forward. And I still stand by that column because I think they've lost 2 years. They still need the outside set of eyes. He has too much faith in this tandem. And the problem is, I don't think Darcy will ever fire Ruff.
He's pretty much said that.
You're stuck with both of them until someone comes in and persuades this owner you have a problem. They had a problem. It was 2 years ago the other day. There was a problem. They hadn't made the playoffs or won a playoff series in several years. They've had dysfunction. Darcy was telling us that Connolly and Roy were 2 of the top 20 centers in the league. It was untrue. They were getting mulligans. I thought he was the type of owner, the type of fan who recognized the dysfunction and was going to come and do something about it. And he turned out to be the opposite.
Well, we know that, George Steinbrenner has proven that money can buy championships, and it also can miss on championships. You can put a lot of money into putting a team together. Doesn't mean you're going to win. Terry Pegula's been here for 2 years. He has spent some money. He's obviously going to spend a lot of money putting up a facility just across from the arena. He's put money into the arena. What's your gauge on the 2 years that Pegula's been with the team?
Very uneven, and I don't think they have really hit any bullseyes. I don't think they have many of what I call value players in a salary cap sport that are outperforming their contracts. You have plenty of people playing up to their contract. Myers, I wouldn't even think Pominville. Miller certainly isn't playing up to his contract. Leno was a bad mistake. You can't. The problem with getting all this money to spend is you can spend it badly and then you're stuck with it. It doesn't guarantee anything. When you talk about Steinbrenner and money in baseball, there's no salary cap. When you can spend $200 million and another team spends $40 million, that's a pretty good advantage. When everything's kind of even, it doesn't guarantee much at all. In fact, I think they have fewer of those younger players that are making their way in the league that are going to be stars than a lot of teams. Hodgson, he's given credit for that. He's not showing me much. Foligno, people got excited about. I think the talent on this roster is overestimated.
And that points to the general manager.
You give him Earhoff because he's played well lately. Well, congratulations. You gave him a $40 million contract, and he's playing 23 minutes and playing well. That's it.
Okay.
And their defense overall stinks.
We're just getting warmed up because we're going to talk about the Buffalo Bills when we come back. More with Jerry Sullivan right after this. Welcome back, Sports Wrap-Up. Jerry Sullivan, the Buffalo News, in studio with me tonight. We just talked about the Sabres, and now we're going to talk about the Buffalo Bills. And we're going to hopefully have an opportunity to sit down with both Russ Brand and Doug Marrone coming up in another week or two. And I haven't had a chance to meet Coach Marrone. You've written a couple of things. First, before I get into the coaches, because I didn't see, there's another channel in town did a 1-hour special on Ralph Wilson, and I didn't see it. And I would have watched it. But
I was on that.
You were on it, and I saw the tease. And everybody had all these positive things to say except the clip they ran with you. So not having seen the rest of the interview, I thought you were kind of hard on Ralph. Were you hard in the whole interview on
Seriously?
Ralph?
I thought it was.
Well, the clip
it was
easy.
The clip they used,
and
they kind of toward the end, it was about his legacy, and his legacy is remains to be written because if the team leaves Buffalo, he will be despised as the person who took the team out, and it would be the affirmation that Buffalo is no longer big time. Now, is that fair to him? Not necessarily. I don't necessarily think he owes Buffalo anything. I know he doesn't feel that, but that would be it. I mean, Buffalo's clinging to an NFL team. Sorry for the hockey fans. It's a niche sport. It's not a major sport in this country. You take away the Bills, we're not Toledo, but
maybe we're Rochester.
Right.
Okay. So the Bills. I've used this line before. I'll real quickly say it again. I saw this great line in a movie. Robert Duvall said it. Happiness is nothing more than having something to look forward to. And I've always remarked that the Buffalo Bills in general have been very good at creating something for fans to rally about. They haven't won on the field in the last 12 years, but there's always something in the offseason to get people to go buy tickets. So now you got a new coach. You got a new general manager. First of all, your take on Russ Brandon becoming the actual president of the team.
I think it's long overdue. It remains to be seen what he'll do with that power. But ever since Donahoe, Ralph was afraid of the empowered football figure. Would I rather this person have a long track record of football personnel decisions and success, yes. But I think Russ has some ideas. I think he represents youth. He's been going to meetings in the league for 10 years. He knows people. He knows things that are going on, and he's up to date on things like analytics. And so I think that's a positive change because it was so much dysfunction based on Ralph being an old owner who was clinging to that power and was afraid. He's literally afraid of genius, Ralph, in a lot of ways. He doesn't believe in the genius of the football coach, football GM. And I think when Donahoe blew up in his face, it kind of confirmed that. So he's been letting this organization drift for years while all these bad decisions were made. I think Russ can change some of that. Now, he's picked a young college coach. I'm kind of on board with that. I'd rather have that than another Chan-Gailey. Now they have to make some very good decisions. I would have run Nix out right away the way I would have Darcy Regier. I just see that as a conflict. I'd love to see Doug Whaley empowered and move this thing forward. So for me, it's optimism. But it's guarded optimism because bad quarterbacks will get a lot of people fired. And they need to make some good decisions right away, and it starts with finding the quarterback, if not in this draft, in the next one. But it's a long way of saying Russ is on the right track.
You know, Russ, certainly when he worked for John Butler, I know he paid close attention, and I know that John brought him into the football discussion. So Russ has always wanted to be more a part of the football side of things. Now he's got his chance. I mean, you know, I had somebody say to me just the other day, kind of an insider, who said, you know, Russ could have stayed in that business position for the rest of his life. I mean, he pretty much was protected because he's really mastered the business side of the business, especially in a market this size. But now he's out on the firing line. I mean, what he does as the president of the team will be critiqued much more than what he did as far as selling season tickets.
Yeah, and I think he likes this. I think he feels it's a challenge that he's wanted. And he's a competitor. We know he played sports at a very high level, and he loves sports. We love talking about the NBA, actually, and baseball. But I think he wants to succeed and compete. And there are a lot of guys that have won. The guy who built the Chicago Bulls and won all those championships with Michael Jordan was a former sports writer named Jerry Krause. So you don't necessarily have to have the pedigree as the football guy, the scout who drove around in the little car all those years the way John Butler and Polian did. And you're right. I think Butler took him under his wing, and Russ did want that. When he got empowered the first time as GM, he was excited about that and felt to some extent he had paid his dues. But he still needs to put in place strong scouts who can find the talent for him, because obviously he's not going to go out and do that. Buddy Nix has done some of that, but I think the scouting department over there has gotten stodgy and hasn't come through. The pressure is really on them, and we've never really done who are the scouts and who's coming through here and what are their mistakes. I know Tom Odrak was left in there for far too long.
Yeah.
They need to find this quarterback. It's a little scary that they've got a coach and an offensive coordinator from Syracuse and the quarterback from Syracuse on the board. Are they going to see things in Ryan Nassib that aren't going to translate to the NFL? And also, do they feel a little bit of a sense of obligation to Nassib for playing so well at Syracuse? It helped put them here in these jobs. Because if he goes 4-8, he's not here. Nate Hackett's not here if they go 4-8. And without Ryan Nassib at quarterback, they would have gone 4-8. So, on the other, maybe Nassib is the answer. I don't know.
Well, you know what? First of all, you never know where the next great coach is going to come from, and you don't know where the next great quarterback's going to come from. I mean, Tom Brady's proof of that. You mean,
Bill Polian.
Stuff happens. Well, Bill Polian. I mean, but one thing that you have to really look back, you know, if you're on this earth long enough, you start to see history repeat itself. And, you know, Marv Levy was a retread. When Polian brought in Marv Levy, the only reason why Bill Polian brought in Marv is because he worked with him in Montreal, and he respected him, and he liked his philosophy. Marv got dumped by the Kansas City Chiefs. All of a sudden, with Bruce Smith, Jim Kelly, Thurman Thomas, Cornelius Bennett, Shane Collins, he suddenly was a Hall of Fame coach. I mean, players make coaches. Right. And with a few rare exceptions, you got to have the horses, and that'll make anybody look good. So where do you think this team still needs to improve?
Oh, God. Well, they need the quarterback, first of all. They need help at receiver. They desperately need a true number one receiver. They need help at linebacker. I mean, Nick Barnett was their best linebacker the last 2 years. They just cut him.
Yeah.
They need help, more help at defensive back. Because in this sport, Dick Duran was right about one thing. You can't ever have enough cornerbacks. Aaron Williams, the guy they picked ahead of
So basically you're saying running back and offensive line are solid. After that, they need help.
And they might need a left guard because Andy Levitri might not be here next year, and he started every game for 4 years. So dug a hole for themselves. I think one thing I think with the Sabres dysfunction it leads people to believe that the Bills aren't so bad off. You know, it's interesting in this town. There's only 2 teams, so when all the negative attention goes to the Sabres, it's like you forget. Oh, the Bills aren't really quite there yet either.
It's the old bumper sticker: "Go Sabres and take the Bills with you." Yeah.
I mean, how many picks have the Bills nailed over the years? I mean,
Not too many in the last 10
again,
years.
talking value picks. You look at an Eric Wood, but you have value picks in Bird and Levitri, who are now they're free agents.
Yeah.
Quickly, they age out as underpaid guys, and they want the big money. You can't pay both those guys, I don't think.
Jerry, we're out of time. Thanks so much for coming down on this
I was
rainy
just
day.
getting warmed up, like you said.
Yeah, well, now we got to give you a plug every Friday. You're on the web or the Buffalo News with your buddy
Bucky and Sully
Gleason.
show, yeah. Video.
What time? 10 a.m.
10 a.m. Yeah.
10 a.m. So tune in to the Buffalo News website. But if he really you've warned, as you said before when you first came in, you've rubbed off on Bucky.
Yeah, but I keep him in his place.
Okay. Jerry Sullivan, we'll be back to wrap up Sports Wrap Up right after this.
Guests of Sports Wrap-Up receive a gift certificate to dine at Ilya DePaulo's Restaurant and Ringside Lounge, 3785 South Park Avenue in Blaisdell.
It's time to wrap up. I'd like to thank Jerry Sullivan of the Buffalo News again for being with us. John Dandies, president of the Buffalo Bisons, who we saw at the top of the show. Don't forget, April 4th is the home opener for the Buffalo Bisons. Much more on that as we get closer to their season. And we also want to give a plug because last night, if you watched WBBZ-TV at 9 o'clock, it was Secrets from Beyond with Karen Reese and Robert Saviola. Karen Reese actually predicted that I would plug her show. And here I am doing it. It's amazing. No, actually, it's a great show. Every Monday night, 9 o'clock. Replays the next morning, Tuesday morning at 9. Secrets from Beyond with Karen Reese, Robert Saviola. Go to our website if you'd like to get tickets. The show right now is backlogged, booked for a couple of weeks. But if you want to get in, send your email in and just ask for a chance to get a ticket to come in to be a part of the audience for Secrets from Beyond. So that's going to wrap up another episode of Sports Wrap Up. We'll be back next week right here on WBBZ-TV. We hope to have on Jim Barron, coach at Canisius, coming up. And as Canisius and Niagara look forward to their season tournament, the MAC tournament. So we hope to have them on, of course, more with UB. And next week, we'll have some highlights from the New York State High School Wrestling Tournament in Albany. Until then, Bob Koshinski saying have yourself a good night and a much better tomorrow.